Now, here's Ed Bernstein.
Have you been over to the Virgin Hotels yet? Because if you go to the Virgin Hotel, used to be the Hard Rock Hotel, in case you don't know, there is a new gem of a restaurant there called, and you know, in this day and age of giving things simple names, what is more simple than One Steakhouse? Michael Morton is a co-owner with his brother David Morton. And of course, the Mortons are no strangers to the restaurant industry. I mean, it goes way back, right? I mean, and that's how Chicago got famous for steaks. It was really the Mortons that made it famous.
It did. Believe it or not, I'm a fourth generation restaurateur. My great grandfather had a beer and saloon joint up in Iron Mountain, Michigan. So, and then my grandfather had the original Mortons on the South Shore in Chicago,
right,
which had no relationship to the steakhouses that my dad wound up doing. And then my dad brought the name back and did a different concept.
Okay, now it's a little bit confusing.
Okay.
Okay, let's go back. Explain the differences in your father and your uncle?
My brother.
Your brother.
Yes. So, well, my father's used to say had 2 wives and 2 lives.
Okay.
And in his first marriage, he had Peter and Pam. Peter, who some people think is my uncle because he's
older.
17 years older,
right,
was the founder of the Hard Rock Cafe brand and opened the first store in London in 1971. And ultimately, when he had his splitting up with his partner, Isaac Tigret, the building we're sitting in here today was his hotel and casino that he opened in March of 1995. So he wasn't around in the house when I grew up for the most part. He went to LA and I grew up in Chicago. And you know, my dad opened Mortons Steakhouse in October of '78. And he had other restaurants, and so I was long working in other places, even as a very young, you know,
So I mean, so you grew
child.
up working. My dad owned a deli. Nothing as elaborate as Morton's, but I mean, I was 11 years old working in a deli. I mean, you kind of grew up the same way.
I did. You know, I washed dishes, I swept the floors,
Yeah.
I did pretty much every position in the restaurant. Always worked Sunday brunch. Sunday brunches were a big day for us, and my dad always worked on Sundays. And I worked Sundays throughout junior high school, and college too.
And what was the attraction of a steakhouse for your dad, and then subsequently for you?
I think that, you know, with the stockyards and so forth in Chicago, there's this you know, great history of steak in Chicago, and other steakhouses that predated Morton's, of course. And my dad opened some great restaurants, but Morton's was really his crowning jewel. And it was just a wonderful, wonderful place, especially the original one, which was in the basement of a building on the corner of Maple and Rush Street, or Rush and State and Maple.
Yeah.
And people said, Arnie, you can't open this, it's in the basement. And people found it. It had this great feel, it had this kind of, you know, great feel that it was in a basement and kind of tucked away and hidden.
Right.
And that was the first
So it
store.
had a little intrigue to it.
It did. You kind of came down the stairs, and it was dark and kind of sexy down there.
Yeah.
And it was just a wonderful place. And I worked in that restaurant for many years.
And then just moving up quickly, you subsequently moved to Las Vegas in the 90s, and then went back into, you know, similar business. It was your first venture in Las Vegas, a drink down the street?
It was drink and eat too.
Harmon and
Koval.
And Koval. Right?
It was kitty corner to what, you remember the old MGM Grand theme park?
Yeah.
When the family business was supposed to be coming to town.
Yeah.
But I had a location in Chicago, and I actually looked at locations in Los Angeles. And I was just turned off. There was, you know, I'm from a city where you could hail a cab and you could stay out late.
Right.
And in LA, I just wasn't feeling it. My brother said, hey, why don't you come to Las Vegas? And this hotel was under construction at that time. And so from then, we opened, the Hard Rock opened in March of '95. We opened in May of '95. And I commuted from Chicago once to twice a month for about 8 years.
Wow.
Until I just continued to fall in love with this city. And, you know, I'm from a city where there was a lot of nightclubs, but we really had the first, what I would say, big modern nightclub here that opened in, you know, again, in the mid-'90s. And, you know, little did I know back then, though, Ed, when Caesar's limos were there, and everybody else was supporting us, that if it was really, really good, the casinos were going to want it and bring it inside the hotels, which they did.
And when you look at the state of that industry today, I mean, because I'm sure you could have opened up another club, but instead you're choosing to open up restaurants, right? I mean, why?
Well, I did actually open up other clubs. So George Maloof was hanging out and drink as a great customer. We got friendly, and he was planning on designing the Palms, and we had talked about doing a nightclub. He was interested in us doing a nightclub at the Palms, which we did ultimately do. But in addition to that, we were building a steakhouse in Chicago at the time called One Steakhouse. I said, George, you want to come see it? And he came and saw it, and we had this 18-foot dome ceiling and silver leaf with, back then it was neon before fiber or LED. And he walked in and he said, this really feels like Vegas. And it did, the design did. He said, let's do it at the Palms. In addition to that, on the second floor above One Steakhouse was a cool little bar that we did called Ghost Bar. And George had a great idea, said, instead of the second floor, let's put it on the top. And so, we kind of exited from drink, and then in the first tower, we did One Steakhouse, Rain, Nightclub, and Ghost Bar, which opened November 15th of 01.
And what huge successes each one of those were in their own right. I mean, Nine, for years I can remember going there once or twice a week. The food was just unbelievable. The Ghost Bar was a must-go-to lounge up at the very top of the Palms, and Rain was, like, at that time, I think was a one-of-a-kind venue. It was so large, and people thought, hey, this is going to be too big to ever really fill it. But not only did you fill it, I mean, there was lines to get in.
It was an exciting time. It's often that I still run into a lot of people that will say, the Palms opened in late 01. That 02 to 07, 08 was really 5 of the amazing years in Las Vegas, because everything was kind of happening in one hotel. The Wynn wasn't open yet. There was no Cosmo, and so we really kind of had the places to go and be seen. And it was all under one hotel, and it was exciting. It was a really, really exciting time in Las Vegas, and that ultimately led to Tower 2, where we did Nove Italiano, the Playboy Club, and Moon Nightclub, stacked up at the top of the Fantasy Tower.
And your family has a little bit of a history at the Playboy Club as well, right?
They did. Yeah. They do. So my dad, when he left his father, in 1959, he opened a little place in Chicago called the Walton Walk. It was on Walton Street, like Walton and Rush Street. And there was a guy named Hugh Hefner that liked to go in there every night and work on his magazine. And it was the first key club in Chicago. So it was a private members club, and Hef was hanging out there every night, and him and my dad really forged a great friendship. And he said, Arnie, why don't you come work for me? And so my dad wound up becoming the president of the hotels from 59 to 73.
Which must have been the best years to be.
Which was the heyday of
the Playboy Club.
Yeah, it probably explains a lot about me. Chasing bunnies around, although all I wanted was the pen lights as a child that they had. And no, it was a really unique time, of course, because it was the 60s. Right. It was the sexual revolution. Hef really changed the world in terms of personal freedoms and so forth. And my dad, was there for the best years. And of course, when the 70s ushered in, the 60s were gone and things started to change. And when Hef wanted to go public, my dad said, no thanks, and went out on his own. And that's when he did his first personal restaurant.
Probably turned out to be a good decision.
It was a really good decision.
Because Playboy had some moments of success, but ultimately it wasn't a good investment.
That was its heyday, and it was really neat doing the Playboy deal, because Hef's daughter, Christy, wound up becoming the president of Playboy for many, many years. And so when we worked on that deal, it was just neat sitting around in the conference room with George and my old partner Scott DeGraff and working on that deal. And I think a lot of the reasons why they let us be the stewards of their brand were because of our family's histories together. And I have known them all since children, since I was a child. since we were kids.
Look, I have multiple questions to ask you about some of your other restaurants in town, but I don't want to neglect this one that we're sitting in. So let me get that out of the way, okay? One Steakhouse at Virgin Hotel here in Las Vegas, formerly the Hard Rock Hotel. What went into you making that decision to open up at the Virgin Hotel? When you think about the Virgin Hotel and you look into the future of the Virgin Hotel, what does your crystal ball say? And then we'll talk about some of the food you're going to be serving here.
Sounds great.
Okay, so why the Virgin Hotel?
Well, we actually opened here as MB Steak prior in the Hard Rock.
Right.
Prior. I had a 5-year non-compete when I had sold the venues back to the Palms. And when that non-compete ran out, a lot of new restaurants had opened, a lot of steakhouses that really, quite frankly, wanted to be Nine Steakhouse. There was no way I could, and I wanted a steakhouse exclusive, which are really, really difficult to get, and wound up doing a party for the Warner Gaming guys who were managing the hotel at the time at our restaurant Le Cave at the Wynn. I said, can we meet and take a walk? And it was really kind of off my radar screen. I knew that the Hard Rock at that time was for sale. And I believed it would change hands, as a lot of those assets couldn't after the Great Recession. And we got super lucky. We thought this property would sell. It did sell. Little did I ever know it would be Virgin Hotels. This amazing, obviously, brand by Richard Branson. But really, this incredible man as Richard Bosworth, that would be the person that purchased this hotel with his ownership group and would breathe new life into this building as it really needed, and to rebirth this property. So I keep saying anybody will listen, we really scored when we met Boz. Right. When Boz bought this. We couldn't have, and we partnered up here at the hotel. And he, one of the first things he said is, let's make it the restaurant, more appropriate for Virgin, which we did. We completely redid the restaurant at that time.
So when you operated Nine, my observation was that, you did a significant local business as well as a tourist business. What's your expectation here at Virgin?
My experience has been that even at Drink, we had a great locals crowd, which brings the tourists. The same thing in the Maloofs. George's history of locals business certainly happened there. And I think this hotel in particular is positioned so well. You're right next to the airport connector. So it's super easy to get here if you live in Summerlin or if you live in Henderson. It's just very convenient. I think especially for locals now too, there's no resort fees, there's no parking fees. It's just a really welcoming place. It's easy to get in, easy to get out. And so I think that the big successes that I've been involved with have had a very big locals component to it. And I think that this is positioned really, to do that also.
And I think that's a good idea. If you please the locals, when tourists come to town, they're going to ask the concierges, they're going to ask their local friends, hey, where's the best place to eat in town? Where do I go? That's why I oftentimes in some of the hotels, they forget about capturing that local business. But I think you're 100% correct, Michael, that one flows from the other, and it's all word of mouth.
They're very connected.
Yeah.
They're very connected, and ultimately it's the locals that are the people
that are
that
here
really
on Monday.
create the experiences.
Yeah.
That we enjoy as locals, or certainly our visitors enjoy, because they're going to ask the dealer or at the tables or the cocktail server about what experiences to enjoy in town, and from all over the city. And I really think that, again, it's based on its location and position right next to the airport, close to the convention center. And, this hotel has 130,000 or so square feet of convention space. So there's a lot going for it from a business side and from a local side. So we're really excited about it.
If I were an investor in in your steakhouse, the first question I think I would ask you is, why a steakhouse? It seems that there's a growing trend to get away from meat and meat products. There's a whole subset in the industry going, and it's growing.
Right.
And then there's, it seems like there's no shortage of steakhouses still.
Well, I think when people really want to enjoy themselves and they want to splurge, whether it be on a great glass of wine or something they're eating, maybe they're not eating all the time. When this first anti-red meat thing started happening in the 90s, I remember my father saying, it's okay, because if they're going to eat it, they're going to eat the best. And we're going to give them the best steak they can get. And I believe that's still true today. And although maybe people are getting healthier, when they want to go out and enjoy themselves, steakhouses are really the vibrant dining experiences. I think a lot of them are. And of course, Las Vegas has that. But the menus in steakhouses have changed dramatically also.
In what way?
Well, there's a lot more, what people call female friendly, and I would just call them really more healthy choices. I don't know that you saw as much fish and tuna tartars and healthier salads and so forth.
Brussels sprouts.
Lots of Brussels sprouts.
Cauliflower.
A lot of those aren't always so healthy when they mix in with them.
Yeah.
But I think that for us, we want to have items on our menu that, are healthy alternatives. And I think most restaurants do that, where if you want to have a steak, you can, but if you want to have, a great piece of fish or, something more, and we're big vegan people too. We love people that want to eat vegan. We have, so we have vegan options and so forth. So we can take care of those requests.
What goes into a great steak?
Well, it really.
I mean, is it the meat you're buying from the cow, starting with the cow and the grass-fed and non-grass-fed? How does that work?
There's so many options out there today, but there's some really great smaller purveyors today that I think the old days of, again, the Chicago steak, or stockyards, where it was just mass production and all corn-fed, have really changed significantly. And so I think it's, there's just better options in terms of the regional. We get we use Midwestern producers for the most part. And there's just, it's just part of being, I think, more, focused on what's healthier today for the animals, and not using, antibiotics and all the other things that used to be used in a lot of meat products. And I think it's also being done in more of a humane way than it used to.
When I first moved here in the 70s, I remember Binion's. It was always very famous for steaks because they imported them, I think, from Kansas City or somewhere in the Midwest, right?
Yeah, Kansas City's got a long history too.
Yeah, with cows, right?
But a lot of those, if you look at there's some incredible old photos in the south side of Chicago of basically these train cars of cows being shipped in to go to the slaughterhouses.
So when you describe your menu, how would you describe it to our viewers?
We have the classics. We really do, right? There's certain things that people just want to come for.
What would they be?
Well, our steaks, of course.
Yeah.
Our steaks. But we've got some amazing things that, again, you weren't going to find at Morton's in the 70s. If I think about, the squid here, and things are done in a different preparation methods that weren't done back then. If you even look at, like a chicken brand, like a Mary's chicken brand today, is a great brand, raised
well
in a much raised, certainly in a much better way than they were back then. But I think it's just more inclusive. You can still take a lot of things and make them unhealthy if you want, and I
remember the first time I ate at Morton's, they would bring out different cuts of meat, right, on a plate and show you the actual cuts.
Yes.
Right, they still do that, by the way?
You know what? I haven't been to Morton's in some time.
Yeah.
We sold the company, so we're not involved with Morton's anymore. But as a server, I used to have to do that and roll the cart over.
Right, yeah.
And it was a lot, because it took 5 minutes to hold up the lobster, show them the Idaho baked potato, the big tomatoes.
But it's part of the experience, right?
And it was a cool thing. There was a real wow factor and sizzle to that.
Yeah.
So we do bring a couple steaks out, table side. We haven't yet here at One Steakhouse since we've reopened, because we've kind of had our hands full with the training and so forth, right now.
And what's it like opening up a restaurant in the middle of COVID?
It's interesting. There was an incredibly rewarding experience. Normally when people are training to open a new restaurant, they're not getting that. To see how excited people were to be trained, to be able to go back to work, was really remarkable. People were getting dressed up to go to training. that you would never see
Happy
before.
to be just out of the house.
Happy to be out of the house, happy to have a job. To see the people, you know, the unsung heroes of our city that are in the hospitality world that take care of other people, to make other people happy. And certainly the world needs more happy now than it ever has. To see them happy, to take care of the people that are taking care of people was really an amazing experience. And you know, there's benefits to it also. I mean, usually it's very hard to hire here in Las Vegas because everybody's busy, the labor pool's tight, and so there's just some wonderful people that are super excited to get back to work. And to have that energy here, it was different. It was different. Of course, we had to follow some COVID protocols, as everybody has to. But it's what we do. Yeah, we're in masks. Yeah, we're doing some social distancing and things like that. But it was really, really, I think one of the things I'll be really proud of was seeing people go back to work after being at home for the last year.
Well, hopefully you're timing this so that the opening is at the tail end of the COVID, and then things are going to be normal very quickly. And I should mention that you're fully vaccinated, I'm fully vaccinated,
Yes.
and we both have our masks in our pocket. But you know, I've always sensed that when you walk into a restaurant, you have the waiters and the bartenders are wearing masks, and we as customers sit down at a table, you take off your mask. But it's got to be very difficult for the servers and the bartenders to be in 8-hour shifts wearing masks on their feet, by the way, the whole time.
It is, and I think especially because there's that human connection that people come to restaurants for experiences, for these great moments in their lives, and for important dinners or just a general celebration or for a business deal. And I'm one of those people where I walk by people, whether it's in the hallway in a hotel or on the street, to smile at people. And when you can't see somebody smile, it's a really different feeling. And try to make eye contact with them, and it's so, we've got to do what we've got to do to get through this, and we're all doing it together, and it's important. But I think, John O'Donnell, who's been with us forever from One Steakhouse, and he's got this big booming welcome and a lot of hand gestures and so forth.
John's a bartender that used to be at Nine, right?
He used to be at One Steakhouse for many years, and has been with me since he left there.
Still here.
And he's still here.
This bar right here.
At this bar right here,
Hey,
J-O-D.
That's entertainment in and of itself.
He used to be a phonologist. Now I've changed him to Bon Vivant. His new title is out. But, it's just an amazing experience. I mean, he's so happy to be back at work, and as all of our team members are, doing what they love to do.
I wanted to ask you also, because you do have, you have a restaurant at the Wynn, which was that the first thing you opened after your 5-year prohibition?
No, I opened that before that because it was outside of what I had there, which I was restricted to steak, Italian lounge, or nightclub.
But you opened at the Wynn La Cave, and how's that doing, by the way?
It's doing amazing. It's doing amazing. It's just, the Wynn is such an amazing property. It's an honor to be there. Steve Wynn let me be his first food and beverage tenant in the building, and he used to live down the hallway in the golf club villas, right. And it was just a real honor. It's still an amazing honor to be there, and it's such an amazing property. But La Cave is doing really, really well. Of course, we've gone through our transitions and so forth,
challenges for
and
sure.
our challenges there. But the Wynn has been incredible to work with, and they've helped us a lot just to ensure that we could, be there when this is all done.
Yeah, it takes partnerships and teams to get through these kind of times. And of course, having had an office downtown for the last 40 plus years, everybody in my office is familiar with La Comida. Christian is she's eating Mexican food 3 times a week probably. But you have a great venue down there. The Mexican food is, I don't know if I'm speaking out of line, to me it tastes like, healthy, clean, pure Mexican food. Typically when I eat Mexican food, it's like, okay, there's going to be a bunch of chips, and I know
rice and beans,
it's not going to be good for me, right?
Yeah.
But you can actually get some healthy things down there.
You can, and from a business perspective, I think the downtown really was tough. It was really hard. We actually, only closed for the mandatory closure at the Wynn and at the MGM Grand. But downtown, we kept closed for 8 months, 7 or 8 months. And so we just reopened about 6 weeks ago. And kind of like here, it felt like the right time.
Right.
And there's some people that grounded out through it, but we didn't. It just didn't really make sense for us. And so it was really, and we got, amazingly, I was so happy that all of our team members pretty much had come back. And that's hard to do because,
How do you feel
people
about
moved on.
downtown now?
Well, it's really terrifically sad what happened with Tony. Tony was our biggest partner, and our
Tony Shea.
Tony Shea, excuse
Yeah.
me. And I think what he created there has so much momentum, and downtown will live on as everything does after all of us are, one day will be gone. And so I'm very bullish on it. I think, the statistics of people coming downtown are amazing. That they spend one of 3 days typically. They'll spend downtown. I think there was 18 million or so visitors, maybe not last year, but the prior year, who had gone downtown to visit. So I think there's good things to come, and there's challenges, of course, being downtown too. And so I think La Comida was great because it was just the right concept for downtown for us at the right time. Hard to believe we opened in 2013 down there, so we're on our 8th year.
It's been a while,
there.
right?
Yeah.
And Crush and Greek Street at MGM.
Crush and the Greek Sneak. Greek Sneak has not.
Greek Sneak, I'm sorry.
That's okay. They work out of a sister kitchen, so they work out of the same kitchen. The Greek Sneak we haven't reintroduced yet. Crush is open, has been open since the lockdown, and the MGM has actually held up really well, better than I thought it would, for these giant hotels, right? And again, we were just so lucky to have great, I say partnerships with our landlords down there, and the MGM has been wonderfully supportive also to us to help us get through these times.
Hey, Michael, time just flew by. We've already passed a half an hour. It's
good to see you.
Thank you very much. The restaurant is beautiful. We've been showing it during the interview. Ceiling on top of us is just incredible. It's sexy, it's romantic and fun, and the food, of course, it's going to be Michael Morton foods. Can't go wrong. So it's the One Steakhouse, O-N-E, one. Talk about a short word. That's it. It's it. Great branding.
Well, thanks for having me.
Thank you very much, Michael Morton.
Great to be with you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ed.